I am a cucumber success. I will succeed planting cucumbers. I will succeed with cucumbers. I am a cucumber success. No, you're not. You're a failure. What are you talking about? I can grow cucumbers. I have grown cucumbers. I'm a competent gardener. Yeah, what about last year? We don't have to talk about that. Talk about how you're gonna fail again? I'm gonna succeed, okay? You're gonna succeed. Fail. All right, let's flip it then. Right. Heads, tails. Just as I suspected. Cucumbers are the cats of the plant world. Temperamental, at times clingy, at times aloof. From boom to bust, they string us along with unmatched expectations. They can flood us with mountains of unsolicited fruit, or leave us dry, wilting over their metaphorical fainting couches. They're wild and dainty, generous and stingy, sweet and bitter, resilient and fickle all at once. When you plant this quantum state of a vegetable, the result is not a guarantee. Much like Schrodinger's cat, cucumber success or failure can only be determined by the act of planting. Why was the origin of this tricky vegetable shrouded in misconception until recently? What causes some cucumbers to be insanely bitter? How could eating them make you sick? And why do some cultures actually value the wild bitter fruit? How are they connected to a sinister character of Eastern folklore, thought to haunt unsuspecting riverbank dwellers? How did cucumbers bring about explosive success and fortune to a man after nearly erasing from the map a household brand you probably have in your kitchen cupboard today? And most importantly, what makes growing cucumbers at home such an unpredictable ordeal? What complex natural web is responsible for our gardening failures, and what can we do about it? You are about to find out as I share my own saga trying to successfully grow this unstable veggie in my own garden to enjoy in a literally mouth-watering dish. Let us explore the culture and agriculture of the fabulous and fickle pickle. I've had a checkered history growing cucumbers. There were decent years, horrible years, and years with astronomical harvests. The reason for so much variability, it remained a mystery to me. But if cucumbers are so unpredictable, how has the modern food industry actually tamed this beast? They can provide us fruit any day of the year, anywhere in the world. Had we, however, lost something in this trade-off? Were we swapping convenience and aesthetics for a more precious essence only the barely domesticated cucumber can provide? Let's start with the golden glow of my most successful harvest. Years ago, I grew Armenian cucumbers of mythical proportions. There were so many cucumbers on the vines that when I would forget to harvest the fruit while still immature, it would engorge overnight into a veritable anaconda. It would low-key scare me for a split second. Laocoon, the Trojan priest of Greek mythology, would have been equally scared. He warned Troy against Greeks bearing gifts, while the city welcomed the notorious Trojan horse. Athena, who wanted Greeks to succeed, sent a giant snake to torment him. For the months of intense cucumber harvest that year, I'm sure friends and neighbors may have wondered about the continuous gifts we bore that golden summer. Cats, the cucumber's spirit animal, are also wary of unexpected cukes, as seen in viral videos. Turns out they don't like snake-like fruit sneaking into their personal space either. They'd rather be in control. I couldn't quite pinpoint what I did right that year to have a bumper crop. Perhaps I lucked out with the weather, perhaps it was the type of cucumber I grew. Success seemed like a game of chance from a pop-up carnival. Could it even be rigged? I've had great harvests since, but now and again I get a year that's a dud. Like last year, when I tried growing them for the first time in this new place. I had the unfortunate discovery today. I see signs of insect damage. So I struggle with cucumbers sometimes, and I treat them almost like cats. And I say that because, just like cats, cucumbers are pretty temperamental. You can't really go around and try to baby them and get their attention. They're just gonna ignore you. they're gonna die and languish and don't care. If you don't look at them, then they're doing incredible things. I started too late in the season, setting up myself for failure. My father would often say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. He loved the positivism of motivational speakers and American marketing gurus selling success. He often mentioned Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. My introverted, half-cup empty self was never sold on it. Life's too messy to chart universal laws for success, in my opinion. But I did need a better plan to grow cucumbers. I couldn't depend on luck alone, and I didn't need catchy but hollow motivational maxims. I needed deeper knowledge. After last year's cucumber fiasco, I want to make sure that I have cucumber, especially the lemon cucumber. It's a variety that I've learned to grow in love with it. It does have very distinct characteristics in terms of the water content and the interior gel, which for a specific recipe, it makes all the difference. Now, I'll share the recipe with you if I'm successful this year. So I'm not gonna worry too much, not gonna be too anxious about it, because usually cucumbers pick up on that. It's the right time to start them. Using the plate germination method, I should be successful, at least I hope I will. I placed my germinating plate in a warm spot and waited for the seeds to do their magic. Meanwhile, I tried to figure out why I had so much instability with cucumber crops. Perhaps the answer lay in understanding where cucumbers came from. After all, it could be the environment and not something I was doing. Through experience, I learned that the seeds sprout the fastest at around 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. As expected, with optimum temperature and humidity, my seeds were bursting out of their shells. Most of the lemon cucumber seeds have already sprouted, and it's been, 3 days since I've put them to germinate. So for sure, this method is the one to go if you have only a few seeds. So right now I'm going to transplant them to cups, and hopefully in a few weeks they're going to be ready to go into the ground. While I prepared my seedlings to face the outside world, I wondered where in the world had cucumbers originated? When I think cucumber, I think Greek salad. I hastily concluded it was a Mediterranean fruit preferring hot, drier days and cool nights. They are mentioned in Greek and Roman writings as sycion and cucumis respectively. Pliny the Elder writes that cucumber was a delicacy for which the Emperor Tiberius had a remarkable partiality. In fact, there was never a day in which he was not supplied with it. In the Bible, the people of Israel also grumble and miss the refreshing cucumbers of Egypt. The term kishuim is used. Turns out that this origin story is wrong. Modern scholarship has concluded that these ancient peoples were not referring to modern cucumbers, or cucumis sativus as the species is known scientifically today. This was a case of mixed identities. Had the modern cucumber taken credit for an ancient look-alike? The problem is that Cucurbitaceae, the cucumber family, has so many relatives with similar shapes and habits that it was common for a medieval translator to mistake them in ancient texts referring to plants long gone. The ancient names entangle and cross over, like a linguistics cat's cradle. For instance, what we call watermelon today was known as pepo in classical Latin, and pepon in ancient Greek. Yet in Spanish and Portuguese, it's the cucumber that receives the name pepino, while watermelon is called sandia and melancia respectively. Watermelon is scientifically named Citrullus lanatus, but it is cucumber that receives the name cetriolo or cetriolino in Italian, coming from the medieval Latin citrulli. Meanwhile, the modern melon was called melopepo in classical Latin, melopepon in ancient Greek, and melafephon in Hebrew, which I find rather cute. Cucumis sativus was not known to them. What they called cucumis in Latin and sycion in Greek was a long-fruited melon, also known as snake melon, also known as Armenian cucumber, scientifically known as Cucumis melo. All this entanglement just to say that cucumbers only appeared in the Mediterranean in the Middle Ages. Most likely through Mongol conquest, starting with Genghis Khan. My insanely productive Armenian cucumber of that golden summer had, much like the fruit of golden classical times, not been a true cucumber at all, but a melon. And that changed everything. I had to find out more. I'm in the end of May, beginning of June, and I haven't put the cucumbers in the ground yet. I've been waiting for the weather to stabilize, and it has gone from one extreme of near frosts just 3 weeks ago to 80, 90 degrees today. I will be planting them inside of the cages where I had last year's kale that has grown and is starting to flower at this point. It's good that it's protected because I don't want the cucumbers, if they grow, to become victims to any kind of animal out there. The Goldilocks time to plant out established seedlings here in Maryland is between the 1st and 3rd week of May, when low temperatures stop dropping below 50 degrees. Knowing that they did not originate in a Mediterranean climate with cooler nights made sense. Exactly where cucumbers and melons originate is a bit harder to pinpoint. But one thing is for sure, they are tropical and subtropical plants. With the help of wild cucurbits, researchers like Patricia Sebastian and others have used genetics to map out their potential origins. Melons likely came from Africa, cucumbers from Southeast Asia, but both may actually have originated from Australia of all places. Our modern garden cucumber has a close wild relative, Cucumis sativus variety Hardwickii, near the Himalayas in India, which may explain its affinity for milder weather when compared to melons, accustomed to the intense African sun. If I tried recreating its environment of origin, perhaps I could achieve cucumber success. That's what Emperor Tiberius did to cultivate heat-loving snake melons year-round, altering its environment. Royal gardeners scrambled to provide daily fruit to the autocrat. They devised wooden beds with wheels that could be carted around to catch optimal sun, and cover them with spicularia, frames glazed with a translucent rock called mica, to raise temperatures and keep the tropical heat-loving melon vines prospering in cold days. That's basically the same approach Victorian Britons used centuries later to cultivate melons in gloomy England for the aristocracy, using state-of-the-art coal-heated greenhouses. The thing is that melons thrive around 75 to 95 degrees. Cucumbers, on the other hand, coming from the mountain foothills, prefer the milder temperatures between 65 to 85, being better adapted to late spring temperatures. None enjoy temperatures below 50 degrees, so May and June are the best months for cucumber growth, while melons do well in July and August. The right timing was essential. This is likely the reason why the Armenian cucumber did so well in the muggy temperatures of Maryland summers. But was this the only reason? There had to be more to the story. Besides the danger of cold snaps stunting my seedlings, a different threat was slithering into my garden beds. There's a terrible sign here. I think the slugs are getting to be a much greater problem in this garden than my last one. Maybe I took for granted the fact that the last one probably had natural predators, the skinks, little lizards, things like that. For that reason, I'm going to be planting the cucumbers, only a few of them in the beds closer to the front so that hopefully they get established, but I'll wait a few more weeks to see how they develop, at least to have a few extra seedlings in case these are completely decimated by the slugs. I had to take precautions when gambling with such a fickle crop. This made me curious to know how the ancient cultures in tropical lands viewed this willful plant. From its beginning in India, instead of traveling west towards Europe, the cucumber veered east, becoming a staple in East Asian cuisine and culture. It became a symbol of fertility, perhaps due to its tendency to overproduce at whim. In Buddhist and Hindu mythology, the heirless King Sagara piously sought the blessings from a wise sage in order to have children. The sage obliged. One of his wives had a boy, and the other had a cucumber with 60,000 seeds. Maids nurtured the seeds in a pot of ghee, and they became 60,000 sons. Besides the unexplainable fertility, cucumbers could also cause rage. Today we say that a collected person is as cool as a cucumber. A Burmese tale begs to differ. Burmese king Dainko decided to stroll around the forest. He happened upon a field of irresistibly plump cucumbers. Being hungry, he plucked one without asking the farmer and ate it. In a fit of rage, the farmer struck the king with the handle of a spade, killing him. The king's horsemen informed the farmer that according to custom, whoever slays a king becomes a king. The indignant farmer refused to leave his cucumbers, who were like puppies to him. But the horseman informed the farmer he could be king and still have cucumbers to grow and many other nice things. Accepting his fate, the farmer followed him into the palace, where even the queen received him because she didn't want the villages cast in turmoil, but only after he got a good scrubbing to get all that farmer dirt and disease out. And that is how a farmer became the cucumber king. If you ever witness your cucumber plants being attacked or failing after weeks of care, you understand the farmer's indignation. We can't say if the farmer's ability to grow superior cucumbers was due to expertise or pure luck. I just know that we tend to value more what we earn through hard work than we get by happenstance. But a lot of what happens is out of our control. In antiquity, luck and fate used to be more central in explaining success and failure. The Wheel of Fortune, or Rota Fortuna, is a symbol from Greek and Roman mythology that appeared frequently in medieval iconography. The Roman goddess Fortuna would spin her wheel at random, changing the position of those strapped to it without notice. It helped explain the fickle nature of fate, serving simultaneously as an excuse, a consolation, and a warning. In the rigid social castes of ancient societies, this explanation entitled the powerful and consoled the powerless, by disconnecting action from reaction and leaving everything to luck and divine appointment. In medieval times, it was used more as a cautionary tale, to warn that the powerful were just as liable to lose everything when the big wheel turned. Fortunately, with the advent of science, people had to depend less on luck. I decided not to test my luck and planted a few more seedlings in other spots before the heat of summer kicked in. Growing near the stone wall could provide a favorable microclimate at night with the residual heat. Even if this spot was not protected against herbivores, I was still increasing my chances for success. With the Industrial Revolution and end of feudalism, everyone became master of their own destiny, even if this newfound freedom was mostly an illusion. If they tried hard enough, they would succeed, supposedly. About a week after planting out my first cucumbers, as the first blooms of summer festooned the garden, I decided to check out how the seedlings were faring. As luck would have it, slugs had not been an issue. Rainy and cold weather had since evaporated. It's the beginning of June. We're having a kind of a bit of an oppressive heat wave already, and I'm starting to freak out a little bit with the cucumbers because it could be that we went from way too cold to way too hot for them to really want to develop. The two plants that I did plant over here, they're kind of wilting. Hopefully having several cucumbers planted will increase my chances of getting things to grow. And if I add a lot of mulch and water well, and if it rains well, as it's scheduled to rain this afternoon, a thunderstorm, then maybe I have a chance this time. This bolting kale had also been robbing water from my fledgling cucumbers, so I decided to cut it all down, to the detriment of the feasting bees. Despite this temporary setback, the vines would soon flower, bringing a new source of nectar and pollen for them to enjoy. It was also around the Middle Ages that the cucumber as we know it arrived in Europe. This is when scholars find the first depictions of unmistakable smooth-skinned cucumbers, as opposed to the hairy snake melons, in medieval herbals and Renaissance frescoes. It oddly appears in many of Carlo Crivelli's religious paintings, although scholars still debate exactly why Crivelli randomly included cucumbers in most of his paintings. Some think it was a type of personal signature, while others argue it could be a symbol of male original sin, as it's often accompanied by an apple. Yet, unlike the fertility symbol of the Eastern world, in the West, it quickly became labeled a cooling, calming food to diminish passions. Some called their ingestion altogether harmful. Others thought you could die from eating too many cucumbers. I was more concerned with my cucumber dying from too many things eating it. With my plants growing beautifully, I feared waking up one morning to find the entire plant dead, only to ask the proverbial question, who moved my cheese? Nothing is a guarantee in life. We have to bank in surplus to survive times of scarcity. Grains, easily stored, long-lasting, and essential for survival, were among the first forms of currency. Perishable things like cucumbers were more ephemeral. Not everyone had the wealth and power to keep a steady supply of vegetables like Tiberius could at arm's length any time of the year. Pickling was the solution to better use the bounty of this unregulated vine. While cultures everywhere figured out ways to ferment products for later use, 18th and 19th century ingenuity led to the development of large-scale operations for food storing. This is when cucumbers made Henry Heinz rich in a typical 19th century rags-to-riches tale of industrial prosperity. The son of German immigrants, Henry was born in 1844 near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Situated at the nexus of railroads opening up the American Midwest to the coast, Pittsburgh, experiencing astronomical population growth, proved to be a perfect environment for capitalist boom. His father bought a brickyard in 1850, and soon was rich enough to buy a few acres to build a house with a garden to feed his growing family. Henry quickly took on gardening from his steadfast mother and even started selling surplus veggies to local grocers. Ever the business prodigy, by the age of 12, he had his personal plot, horse, and cart, and a growing list of customers. Little did Henry know he was in the right time and place in history. He began selling his mother's preserved horseradish, something housewives were more than willing to buy rather than spend time making. Without governmental oversight in an unregulated market, food adulteration by unscrupulous manufacturers was common. Stone dust, gypsum, even lead and other harmful materials were often found in condiments and pickles as fillers, dyes, and preservatives. Period food reformers denounced the condiments and vinegars as rank poison. The public was uneasy. Understanding that, Heinz took a different approach. He packaged food in clear glass instead of the common brown and green and started building trust in his brand. He was a keen observer of the weather and experimented with seeds, planting conditions, watering regimes, keeping detailed notes on what worked and what failed. By 1861, 17-year-old Henry was cultivating 3.5 acres, earning the equivalent of $72,000 in today's money. Soon he formed a partnership with Clarence Noble, expanding his market to new neighboring oil towns, selling pickles, vinegars, and other condiments. Just like a booming cucumber vine in early spring, Heinz Company was growing exponentially. He had the company wagons painted in pea green and plum to call attention. He instinctively knew that his successful brand had to be part business, part circus act. By 1875, his company grew veggies in 160 acres near Pittsburgh, employing 150 people during harvest. Cucumbers lined his path to success. Success with my cucumbers, on the other hand, was in shakier ground, or better yet, parched ground. One important thing in gardening is to keep water levels of the soil in mind. I think I've become a bit complacent with the fact that I don't have to usually water here in Maryland. And even last year, because I've used mulch, I didn't have to water up until September, October. But this year, I think we're experiencing much earlier dry spell than usual. It's the first week of June, and as I see these cucumbers wilting here, I thought it might have been disease, but actually it might be water from looking at the soil. Obviously, with all these plants here that are mature, the kale plants, they have been fighting for the water, and I need to provide extra water. And sure enough, a few hours later, the wilted leaves were perking up. I may have skillfully neglected these plants a bit too much. They needed pampering and evenly moist soil. When you grow cucumbers under ideal conditions, the vines shoot up at a dizzying speed. Overnight, you have a verdant tangle, much like magnificent carnival tents. The reason why they can grow so fast is the same reason why they can wilt without warning. Structurally, cucumber vines are a lot like water balloons, with a bunch of tiny holes poked in them. They swell up and hold their shape insofar as they have their thin cellulose cell walls inflated with water. As vines, they bank on using other woody plants as scaffolding to support their weight and reach for the sun. 3 days later, my perky and pampered vines were needing structure to grow sustainably. Since I cleared this bed out from the kale, I've planted the cucumbers. I need to already think of the structure that they'll need to start climbing because they appear vigorous. I can see that one already has tendrils trying to reach into something. Getting cucumbers off the ground is essential to improve airflow and diminish potential fungal diseases and fruit rot. Equipped with tendrils, they love to climb and overtake things, but a frail makeshift constitution makes them designed to wilt. They also constantly lose water by transpiration from their stomata pores, especially on hot, sunny days. Since they come from tropical humid conditions, they are particularly bad at conserving water. If water runs out, they shrivel. Watering can quickly perk them up if they're just dehydrated, but if anything clogs up their internal pipes, the whole structure collapses. Watering won't help. With good water and sturdy structure, I was cautiously optimistic that my efforts would bear fruit. But as we say in Brazil, gato escaldado tem medo de água fria. A scalded cat is afraid of even cold water. I have been slighted by cucumbers many times before. Henry Heinz, on the other hand, had yet to experience the other face of the willful cuke. After rampant success, Henry Heinz was proud of what he achieved, writing, "I have more ambition and confidence in my ability to manage the house, garden, finances, etc. than I had for 2 years past." This is when rampant growth started to show its weakness. Much like a cucumber vine lacks in structure to hold itself up and is in constant danger of sudden wilting if a constant supply of water is not guaranteed. Bigger payrolls led to short-term bank loans. As a 31-year-old going on 60 who worked while others slept, accustomed to the infectious optimism early and continued success can impart in a person, Henry would not have believed that too much of a good thing would prove to be disastrous and make his empire come crashing down. Turns out that the wheel of fortune has a way of turning around. The lowly cucumber, after building him up, would bring his downfall. Short of operating capital in a depressed economy, he was running out of financial options. The summer of 1875 proved to have the perfect growing conditions, a gardener's dream, which led to an astronomical bumper crop, the likes of which he hadn't experienced. Meanwhile, as the summer solstice neared, my plants were also experiencing a growth spurt. The cucumbers are looking much more promising, but I'm not going to hold my breath since I do see some discoloration here. It might die any day. I'm not going to put too much intention in it and just let it do its thing. I do plan on putting more mulch. Hopefully that will give it a boost of more water near the soil where it needs to, and also fertility, and that way it can grow and probably produce at least something. I do see several wasps around here. Since wasps are known to be predatory, I should put up more habitat for them so that I can create a better balance and a system that can actually allow me to have cucumbers like I had in my last place without having to spray or anything like that. A resilient system is key to overcome hardship, as Heinz would find the hard way. Cucumbers started to clog his salting stations, arriving at a rate of 2,000 bushels a day. Their unpredictable nature would ultimately put his business in check, not through dearth, but through bounty. As my father used to say, the biggest adversaries of humankind are success and failure, which I must say tempered his usual unbridled optimism I generally eschew. Henry hired additional workers and extended working hours from 14 to 18. Payroll costs soared as the cucumber harvest was processed. Boosted by the abundance, he set up a magnificent display at the first Pittsburgh Exposition in October of 1875 to showcase his success. Much of business is indeed show business, and the show must go on. But alas, despite strong sales, backstage, the bumper crop of cucumbers had pushed the company's finances to the limit. Cukes had clogged the money pipeline, and by December 17, the Heinz and Noble Company had filed for bankruptcy. Success had gotten to him, and cucumbers had dealt the final blow. Would this be the end of the Heinz empire? Well, will a gardener ever give up after fantastical failure? The cucumbers have overall surprised me this year because their growth is very different from last year's failure. At least I have a plant and it has been flowering. Now, I'm not going to put too much great expectations on it for it to set fruit, but if it can hang on for just a few weeks before cucumber beetles start to destroy it, at least I'll have something to harvest. Being such tricky, unpredictable creatures, it's no wonder that in Japanese folklore, they have been associated with another impulsive trickster straight out of a fever dream, the Kappa. This amphibious river sprite with humanoid reptile features is rather sinister. Clumsy on land, it's very agile in water, terrorizing people near riverbanks. Its favorite food happens to be cucumbers. Blamed for drownings and disappearances, people traditionally left cucumbers near rivers as a way of appeasing kappas. Coincidentally, they do share something with their beloved gherkins. Beside the color, they possess a dish-like cavity on their heads that must always be filled with water, lest they die of dehydration. When venturing inland, they protect it with a metal dish or helmet. While quite malevolent and sinister, they can at times help those who befriend them, irrigating their fields or helping with medical issues. They do have a soft spot for niceties and politeness, strangely enough. Bow in politeness when encountering one. It will feel obligated to return the favor, which will cause the water in its head dish to drain away. I try to be polite with my cucumber vines as well, always keeping it watered and mulched, but because of my past interactions with this petty plant, I've learned to keep expectations to a minimum. Just like you tame a stray cat by not showing too much affection and letting the cat approach you on their own terms, I treat my cucumber vines with the same skilled neglect. I provide the basics it needs while giving it space. If it wants to grow, it will. With midsummer approaching, providing this most basic need was proving more difficult with a shift in the weather. These weeks have been scorchers, and the cucumbers have grown, but it hasn't rained a lot, so I had to resort to artificial watering. I try to water every 4 days, and when I do, I water deeply. I hope that there will be forecasts for rain, but all the recent forecasts have just shifted, and what was scheduled to be a rainy day suddenly becomes sunny in the 90s. There is a really good sign that means that, yeah, I'm going to get something, but there's also a slightly worrisome situation that might develop. While I stressed over my domesticated vines, I couldn't help but think of how well the wild cucumbers grow without anyone's help. Like the wild bird cucumber, Sycius angulatus, I spotted last year in a neglected corner of the garden. It doesn't produce edible fruit, and perhaps the plant is bitter like many other cucurbits. I don't know, I never tried. But even domesticated cukes can at times be bitter, a vestige of a wilder past. Yet could bitterness be what protects other wild cucumbers? I had to find out. Some cultures surrounded by wild cucumber vines have developed a peculiar view of bitterness that differs from our Western mindset. We see bitterness as inherently bad, but for the Nilotic people of South Sudan, bitterness is more multifaceted. There is a wild cucumber, cucumis prophetarum, that holds special significance in ritual because it is so bitter. The Dinkas sacrifice this fruit in lieu of an animal victim by splitting it apart and rubbing the juice on their chest, head, and back to protect against sickness. They call these cucumbers kuoljok, jok meaning power, and kuol coming from the Dinka notion of kek, having bite or strength. Hot or bitter things are described as biting or even effective. A master of the fishing spear is considered kek. So is an effective prayer or invocation. The newer people sacrifice these wild cucumbers as ritual cleansing after burying their dead, committing taboo infractions, or after having a bad dream. They cut the cucumber in two, keeping the right half and throwing the left half into the bush, carrying with it the contagion of the taboo. What makes these cucumbers effective to them is precisely their bitterness. The Padi also see bitterness, kek, as strength. The opposite is not sweetness, it is bath, tastelessness. What gives cucumbers and other plants in the squash family bitterness are chemical compounds called cucurbitacins, produced as a defense against herbivores. These compounds are not only bitter tasting, they can also be toxic. Poisoning due to bitter cucurbits is rare. because the compounds are so bitter that most people end up spitting the offending fruit before ingesting it. But a few cases have been reported of what is commonly called toxic squash syndrome. In France, 2 women had nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea after eating soup made with bitter pumpkins, and had hair loss weeks after the incident. While our domestic varieties have lower doses of cucurbitacins, we may at times get a lucky or unlucky bitter one. Some varieties are more likely to turn bitter, as I've experienced with the Japanese cultivar, while others, like the lemon cucumber I was planting, are not known to produce bitter fruit. It seems that the temperamental cucumber just throws a bitter fit now and again, but scientists have found reasons for increased chance of bitterness. Much like a weather forecast, bitter fruit is a probabilistic and mercurial trait. That's because bitterness may be controlled by a main dominant gene that causes the whole plant to manufacture bitter cucurbitacins. Non-bitterness is recessive. But there is more to the story. Cucurbitacin producing plants can produce non-bitter fruit because of another possible gene that suppresses bitter fruit specifically. Thus, there are 3 classes of cucumis sativos: varieties that produce bitter foliage with occasional bitter fruit, varieties that produce bitter foliage but never have bitter fruit, and varieties that completely lack bitterness. Non-bitter varieties can back-mutate to produce bitter compounds, making bitterness unpredictable in plants of the cucumber family. That being said, agricultural practices can contribute to bitter fruit in the plants that can produce the bitter compounds. Young, vigorous plants are more likely to produce bitter fruit. Birth order also matters, with bitter fruit being more common on first lateral shoots than second lateral regions. Surprisingly, high nitrogen fertilization increases bitterness by favoring cucurbitacin synthesis. Cold temperature is another culprit. See, cat's cradle complexity all over again. But there is a reason why this is important for growing cucumbers. Remember it. You'll find out soon. Could bitterness actually help the plant fight pests? And could we harness that power to our favor, breeding more resistant varieties? But wouldn't that create toxic fruit for human consumption? Well, was this a catch-22? What I found out completely shocked me. While the bitter compounds may in general help protect the plant from munching insects, in one case, it helps attract the pest. Discovering this was an epiphany. I finally understood why cucumber is such a fickle crop to grow, especially where I am. It wasn't all in my head. It wasn't something I was doing necessarily. The game was rigged. It just so happens that the insect that is attracted by the increase of cucurbitacin is nothing more, nothing less than the enemy number 1 of cucumbers, the dreaded cucumber beetle. The presence of a few wilted leaves served as an omen that my plants had been breached. All that is solid would melt. You may wonder, what's the problem with having just a few leaves wilting? And for other plants, it might be the case that they may be wilting just because they are damaged. But for cucumbers, it usually shows that there is a systemic problem. Bacteria have breached the xylem channels, which are nothing more than water lines that need to be sealed off from any bacteria, otherwise it spreads throughout the plant. So I am going to take out these leaves, but I know that the bacteria has probably already infected the full plant, and the days may be counted for this plant right here. To combat it, I needed to better understand this alluringly complex disease cycle. The tangled web of cause and effect is fascinating. The striped cucumber beetle and its partner in crime, the spotted cucumber beetle, may dress themselves as circus acts, but they are no laughing matter. The adult beetles munch on blooms, leaves, fruits, and then lay eggs in the ground where their larvae grow by feeding on the roots of the cucumber. This damage can stunt the plant and diminish cucumber yield, but it's not what causes the imminent destruction. In their gut, they carry wilt bacteria, Erwinia trachyphylla, the true villains. The striped cucumber beetle especially is the real kingpin of bacterial wilts of epidemic proportions in the eastern half of the United States. Because I'm in the mid-Atlantic region, my plants are particularly at risk. I live at the mercy of this pesky beetle in the rotating waves of boom and bust of this epidemic. Good years here, bad years there, insecurity everywhere, but I don't give up. After spectacular failure, Henry Heinz did not give up either. Looking twice his age, heavily in debt, and with his confidence from early success shaken, he went for a second act. He convinced his family to loan him seed money. By February 1876, the F&J Heinz Company was launched. Early returns were lackluster. Cash flow problems resurfaced. Yet, he didn't give up. He is remembered today for his many motivational quotes. To do a common thing uncommonly well brings success, had been his mantra. I have to say, there was method to his madness, as he insisted on building a brand based on quality, but now tailoring production to match demand. His business boomed, mushrooming from year to year. Not only was Heinz a clever businessman, he also believed in treating employees with dignity, providing sanitary, orderly workplaces, uniforms, manicures and showers, even rooftop gardens, as well as cafeterias and recreation rooms decorated by art, and with precursors to workplace motivational posters we love to hate today. Whether his paternalistic instincts were truly out of concern for his employees, or as a wise business move, working for him was substantially better compared to other 19th century factories. By 1881, yearly sales exceeded the equivalent of 8 million in today's money. But as a prominent regional brand, to become a national household name, it would need a lucky break. Plenty of competition had sprung up as the age of industrial optimism reached a high point in late 19th century America. Luckily enough for Heinz, the lowly cucumber would flip the script once more. A worldwide fair of unprecedented proportions served as setting. A stage-set city of white marble simulacrum sprang up almost overnight on Chicago's lakefront. Made of plaster, cement, and jute fiber, and lit by newfangled electric bulbs, the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition attracted 27 million visitors over 5 months, at a time the US population was only 50 million. Against this glitzy stage of overnight success, the first Ferris wheel was invented, to soon become an icon for pop-up fairs and carnivals everywhere. The Wheel of Fortune was also turning in Henry Heinz's favor. He would soon step into the limelight. His massive hand-carved oak display was assigned a space on the second floor of the agricultural building. Unsurprisingly, second-floor traffic was way below expectations, so Henry devised a plot to get people to visit his pickles. A Heinz-branded pickle-shaped watch charm would change his luck. He dropped around the fair tickets resembling a baggage check card, promising a free souvenir at the Heinz exhibit. For some reason, this ploy worked wonders. People started piling onto the second floor, asking for the pickle. So many that the floor started to show signs of sagging, as the New York Times later reported. Chicago police even had to control the crowd until the floors could be strengthened to support the extra weight. Heinz pickle charms gained a cult following since then. The cucumber had brought him good fortune, propelling his brand to the national and international stage. By 1900, the J&H Heinz Company was among the first multinational businesses in the US. I've allowed the first fruits of the lemon cucumber to stay on the vine for just a day and a half longer, just because I wanted them to grow a little bit bigger, and it has paid off. At least I know that my first 2 lemon cucumbers will be full size and delicious, even if the plant ends up succumbing any day now. I celebrated my small victory by admiring these beautiful and succulent golden globes. Even if the future was uncertain, I could feast on them today. Yet I still needed deeper understanding to plan for tomorrow. Depending on luck had never been a solid strategy. Well, it's been better than last year. Maybe intimidation is the thing that made this at least produce some fruit, because right in the understory I have a few okra plants that I've sown previously, and they're just waiting for it to die for them to succeed it. Right now it seems that they're stunted, they might not amount to much, but I'll tell this for the cucumber. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for you. If it dies early, the okra is going to be ready. While the world watched the spectacle in Chicago, in neighboring Michigan, plant pathologist Irwin Smith witnessed acres upon acres of cucumbers and squashes wilting from a mystery ailment. Instead of blaming cucumbers as fickle or decrying the pestilence as supernatural punishment, he decided to find the scientific cause and effect behind the agricultural woe. Culturing the pathogen in vitro proved difficult. They only bloom under the perfect conditions inside of the cucumber plant. By 1899, after years of research, he had a breakthrough when he observed under the microscope that the plants he inoculated with his culture died from physical plugging of the xylem channels from the bacteria and not from some enzymatic reaction. Finding the mode of transmission in the wild was the next stage. While he suspected the striped cucumber beetle to be the vector, it was only in 1916 that Frederick Rand and Ella Inlows proved that Erwinia bacteria, named after Irwin, could overwinter in the gut of the insect. This was key to the disease cycle. What has been discovered since is fascinating. During the growing season, beetles visit infected plants and start accumulating the bacteria. As cold weather approaches, infected beetles overwinter in plant litter. Bacterial loads in the guts naturally decline, and by spring, only 1 to 10% of the overwintering beetles test positive for the bacteria. What happens next explains why this disease can spread like wildfire and is at the same time rather unpredictable. When cucumber seedlings emerge in spring, they attract cucumber beetles. That's because their cotyledons, how the first seed leaves are called, produce high levels of cucurbitacin. This is why sometimes you plant out seedlings and they are quickly attacked and die. The funny thing is that while cucumber beetles can feed off of other non-cucurbit plants, they only reproduce in cucurbits. They are in turn keenly sensitive to cucurbitacin in order to find these vital plants for their life cycle. They may also benefit from eating these cucurbitacin-rich vines by accumulating this compound in their body, becoming less appealing to birds and other predators. Cucumbers and squashes are effectively their protective shield. You would think that they would use this valuable resource more wisely, but alas, that's not the case. Cucurbitacins stimulate in them locomotive arrest and compulsive feeding, so that the beetles start aggregating around these plants as if in a newly set up carnival. And just like in a fairground, after days of glee and feasting, only trash and trampled ground is left behind. When one previously infected overwintered beetle arrives and eats, its excrements, called beetle frass, come in contact with the plant wounds, opening up a path for bacteria to invade the plant and lead to its wilt. These beetles are native insects to the Americas. They are also highly attracted to the volatile floral smells that help them find the flowering vines from a distance. Pollen is an important part of their diet, so at some point they may have served as main pollinators to native cucurbits like squash. Their once symbiotic relationship may have turned parasitic when crowded flower parties where they mate and feast became breeding grounds for disease, bacterial wilt, and other ailments like cucumber mosaic virus. This is where the cucumber or squash plants gets the short end of the stick in this relationship. Its goal in life, to produce fruit with seeds, is negated by sudden death. To add insult to injury, wilt bacteria causes the plant to release more cucurbitacins, which in turn causes more cucumber beetles to congregate and feed on sick leaves, a vicious cycle. This increases the rate of infection exponentially amongst the beetle population, who also produce an aggregation pheromone when they locate cucurbit vines, effectively advertising that the fair is in town and it has free food, compounding the infection and destruction. As the vines crash beneath their feet without having the chance to create seeds for the next year, the beetles, whose vast majority are now infected by the bacteria, fly away seeking other sources of food to overwinter and start the process all over again. The only reason why cucurbits have not vanished from the map is that most beetles lose the bacteria culture in their guts over winter. Also, mature plants can develop some resistance to the bacteria, And there are also specific strains of bacteria that infect specific species of cucurbits at different rates. This whole complex saga is the reason why cucumbers are so finicky and unpredictable. There are so many moving parts and things that can go wrong, and the structure of these plants is so weak that they are vulnerable. And this is just one especially destructive disease that affects cucumbers only in the eastern United States. Bacterial wilt is especially catastrophic, but there are other fungal, bacterial, and viral diseases known to keep growers on their toes. And while I can't say for sure, I believe this disease may have reached epic proportions because of monocultures aiding the spread of disease through concentration. Now, you may be asking, if cucumber is such an unpredictable ordeal to grow, how can conventional farmers deal with the issue, especially considering that states that produce the most cucumbers like Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, and Wisconsin are all within the natural range of bacterial wilt? They surely can't afford to invest so much money and time to raise crops for a raging epidemic to wipe it all away. Well, the conventional solution to the problem is to spray contact pesticides frequently, even 8 to 10 times in the season, to kill off populations of beetles as they are attracted to the field, or to spray systemic pesticides like neonicotinoids that persist in the plant and don't have to be sprayed as often. These toxic chemicals are effective, but they have an unintended consequence. They may be killing off populations of bees that are essential to the pollination of even the cucumbers. In fact, when you grow cucumbers, if the fruit is misshapen with a nubby end, it may be due to poor pollination. Excessive heat can also cause that, but having an army of bees to assist you is also very helpful. So you can see it's all a complicated web, a cat's cradle. If you pull one side, you may tangle the other, and when we think we have success, we may be shortchanging ourselves in the future. This is where we have to stop and ask, what exactly constitutes success? Whose success? And at the expense of whom? As I fully expected, the downfall of the cucumber has arrived. It's bacterial wilt. I was hoping that some of the vines would be immune to it and that would hopefully save seed from it in a process that's called land-raised gardening, where you select the strongest seeds. And because ideally I would love to find plants that are resistant to these issues, I would hope that I could get some survivors. Once a problem starts to set in and it goes through all of the xylem channels and it spreads throughout the plant, it's systemic and it dies. And much like all empires, the fall will come one day. But what strategies can we take that have the least impact when growing cucumbers at home? Understanding the pathogen's optimum environment and timing is vital. Fostering beneficial predators such as harvestmen, ground beetles, rove beetles, spiders, parasitoid flies, wasps, and bats can help control cucumber beetles, but they're not going to eliminate them. Row covers do prevent cucumber beetles from infecting the plants when still young and most vulnerable. Of course, when the vines start to flower, then the covers have to be removed to allow the pollinators access to the flowers. This is a time-consuming and costly strategy, and I try to avoid having to depend on plastic products as much as I can, but I might have to take this approach in future years so that I can have a more reliable harvest. Parasitic beneficial nematodes can also help control the larvae of cucumber beetles. And lastly, it turns out that variety selection matters a lot. As I referenced earlier, varieties that produce low or no amounts of bitter cucurbitacins will naturally attract beetles at a lower rate. So selecting these varieties will help us have more luck growing cucumbers. Burpless varieties are known for producing less cucurbitacin, which not only attracts the beetles, but can also cause burping and indigestion in some people. Lemon cucumbers are low in cucurbitacins, and perhaps that's why I've had better luck this year. Keeping the vines from stress is also important. Conversely, trap crops such as blue Hubbard squash that produce lots of cucurbitacins can be effective if organic pesticides are to be used. After discovering all these things, I don't expect my cucumber vines to be perpetually successful. That is because life is complex, and there are many other possible things that can go right or wrong. Alright, let's try it. There's just something about the combination of flavors that makes this cucumber shine. And the texture also, with a little bit of a gel around the seeds. This is amazing. Slightly bitterness of the olives and the fatty content with the acidity of the limes. This is definitely the way to eat lemon cucumbers. It won't quite work the same with other types. If you tried lemon cucumber before and you didn't try it this way, you should. As for the cucumber vines, surprisingly one of them lasted until the middle of August, pumping out delicious fruit till its last day. And the okra plants did not waste time taking advantage of the new solar real estate. I allowed a couple of fruit from this mostly resistant vine to fully mature so I could save seed. Armed with knowledge and experience, I would restart the cycle all over again next year. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Should I continue making these stories? I want to thank all my patrons and everyone who has contributed to the channel by buying art from my Etsy shop. You are the reason why this video exists. It certainly was a mammoth task to research, film, and edit, and I'm eager to read your reactions in the comments. Commenting really helps YouTube to spread this video around. I invite you to check out my 2 previous vegetable history videos in the same style if you haven't seen them yet. If you see value in these productions and would like to help me produce more, you can purchase original art through my Etsy shop or contribute through Patreon. Thank you.